So that's pretty much it. All right, going to be doing my third part of my testimony, the vehicle testimony. This is the jersey that I was wearing in the one picture where I'm riding on my 97 Yamaha Banshee, 1997 Yamaha Banshee, the black and red one, and still have this old jersey. Had this thing, bought it in 1993. Okay, so I'm wearing a shirt here, a motocross jersey that's older than some of my viewers. So I think that's kind of funny. But yeah, 1993, this is old jersey. It has some paint spots on it down here where I was using it when I was doing some work, but still in pretty good shape for all that time. So this study is going to be for those of you who are into vehicles, okay? Not motorsports, okay? We're not talking about armchair racing fans here. You're a fan of NASCAR and like to sit on the sofa drinking beer watching people driving fast. That's not who I'm talking to in this study. If you are a gearhead, okay, if you like motorcycles, ATVs, cars, trucks, be they classic or new or whatever else, that's who this is talking about. This was a big part of my life. And this is not going to be a deep theological study like a lot of my work that I do. I'm a preacher, but I want to talk today about the place of vehicles, all different kinds of vehicles, as you saw in the intro. I've had some really unique stuff over the years. I didn't put everything into the intro video, and I'm going to kind of go through when we tell them some stories about some experiences and things like that. Excuse me. I will be relating some things to Scripture, but this will be an interesting video. Again, if you're into vehicles, I think you'll get a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. So. Going to show first and foremost, I talked about this in another thing here, my official, a lot of people ask me if I have any education. Yes, I do actually. Let me show it to you here. I'll show this on camera, the overhead camera. International Correspondence Schools, and there we go. Zoom out here a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Awarded to Bryan Denlinger in recognition of the successful completion of the course of study in motorcycle repair. Okay, so there you go. My two degrees, if you will, high school diploma and a correspondence course on motorcycle repair. So just had to put that in there. And of course, that's just correspondence. That's not anything real great or whatever else, but vehicle learning about vehicles and things like that is a kind of a hands-on type of deal. So I'm going to go over some things here, some pictures. It's kind of funny because it's like some of the vehicles I've had are kind of old school type vehicles, vintage type of stuff, and then I had some more modern things. And I'm actually going to be doing something similar with this video here, and it's going to probably be pretty long, but if you like vehicles, I'm sure you'll find it interesting. But I'm actually going to be using some old stuff, old, photographs shown with the overhead camera, and then I'll be getting later on into actual pictures taken with digital cameras and whatever else, as technology changed in my life. I was born in 1975, so, this is the third part of my testimony, like I said. The first part was on my different jobs I've had. I've had some very, very unique jobs, lines of work, and things over the years. And the second one is how I came to know the Lord, how I went from being a false church-attending, professing Christian to actually being born again as a Christian, a Bible-believing Christian. And now this is the third part. What part did vehicles play in me coming to know the Lord, and what part do vehicles play in my current life still? It's not that you have to give up vehicles or things like that. Neat vehicles after you get saved and you just got to live kind of a humdrum life of monasticism or something. No, it's just your attitude towards those vehicles will change a little bit, and I'm going to explain that later on, show you what the Bible has to say about that. So if you've never heard it, open your mind a little bit, might be interesting to you. So first vehicle that I have any memories of, other than obviously vehicles my parents drove around. But the very first motorcycle was my older brother. He had a MX100 Yamaha. late 70s. I don't remember the exact year, but he would take me for rides on this motorcycle. And then when I was 10 years old, he was starting to say, okay, now he, had me get on the bike, and he was trying to teach me. He'd ride on the back and kind of put his arms out around me, and hold on to the handlebars, and he'd show me how to work the clutch and how to shift it correctly and everything, and how to shift with my foot and everything, and the brakes and the whole deal. So when I was 10, that's when I first started to ride. And so, I'm going to be putting the pictures up and things of a lot of these bikes. If I don't have a photo of them, I'll put those, the picture up. So first actual motorcycle that I ever rode was a Yamaha MX100, late 70s Yamaha MX100. The next one was this one here. Show this picture here with the camera, overhead camera. And this is me when I was 13 years old, and it was a Suzuki, I think TS100 or something like that, right there. Two-stroke, 100cc. I think it was actual like a 92cc. I think, if I remember correctly. Because if you don't understand about dirt bikes, a lot of times they'll say it's a 100, but it's actually a 92 or 94 or something like that. And the funny thing about it is, I actually have my chainsaw that this channel is named after. Right here's a picture of it. My chainsaw is actually a 394 XP. It's a 94cc two-stroke. So I actually have a chainsaw now that it has a bigger motor than my first dirt bike. So, but memories of that bike, I remember I didn't quite understand a lot of mechanical things early on, and being a two-stroke, of course you had the premix there, and I think it actually had a little reservoir that you could put your two-stroke oil in, and then it would like mix it with the gas or something like this, which I never used it. I would just premix, put it in with the gas, and then put the whole thing in, pour the whole thing in. And I remember the one time I went to the mountains, northern Pennsylvania. My friend had a cabin up there. I took my little Suzuki 100 with me, and I remember we were like riding, and I ran out of gas, and he was like, "What are you going to do?" I was like, "Oh, I'll just use some of yours. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine." Didn't quite understand the very important reason for oil to be in there. You don't have valves and things like that on a two-stroke, and to keep oil there going in. And I'll apologize in advance because I've been out of really active motorcycle type of stuff for a very long time. I still love bikes and things, and we'll talk more about that as we continue. But sorry if I get some of the details a little bit mixed up. But anyways, we were riding up there for like a couple hours, and all of a sudden it was just like my bike got real hot and it just shut off. And thankfully he had like a rope along or something. He had a ATV, a Honda 4Trax 300, and he hooked up to me and pulled me back to the cabin. But it wasn't too long after that my motor seized on the Suzuki. So lesson learned. Okay, don't run a two-stroke without your premix in there, your oil. So that was kind of a hard lesson to learn. After that, my older brother and I wanted something bigger, just have a 100cc, and all the guys in the neighborhood, we had a bunch of big hill climbs down in the woods, and they were pretty good sized hill climbs, and my little Suzuki would just barely make it, and sometimes wouldn't make it. And if you've been through that, the joy of going up the hill and you're shifting down, and all of a sudden you realize I'm not going to make it, and you stop. Then you're like leaning up on your tank, and you're like kind of front brake going down. You're trying to do the the K turn or whatever that go back down. So I got a little sick and tired of that, and I wanted a little bit more power, a little bit more speed, especially for the hill climbs. And my older brother, the one that taught me how to ride, his name was Dean. I have two older brothers. Tom's the oldest, Dean's the second. Dean was the one that taught me how to ride, and Dean knew a guy that had a Yamaha Trials 250 bike. I'll show pictures of this thing here. Right there it is. The old Trials bike. There's another picture of it. And the little seat, this was the predecessor of the more modern Trials bikes. Looks a little bit different, but Again, a two-stroke 250 Yamaha. I think it was early 70s, about 1974, I think, if I remember correctly. But the thing, they called them mountain goats. It's one of the names that they would have, nickname for these bikes. And it pretty much lived up to that. I mean, the thing would climb just about anything. Wasn't the fastest bike out there. 1974 Yamaha 250 trials bike. I bought it for $250, sold for $300. So I made $50 on that bike. But I remember hill climbs were not a problem for that thing. I mean, first gear, it just crawled. I mean, you could just crawl over anything with that thing. And but I remember the one time I had shorts on, and it was summertime, and I was riding it, down in the woods across from where I grew up, and there was a log that was kind of at an angle going across the trail, and it had just gotten done raining that morning, and so the log was nice and wet, no bark on it or anything, just kind of slimy and wet. And I went to go over it, and I hit it with the front tire, and it slipped like that, and I just went down, and my leg went in underneath the hot motor. I still have the nice scar on the back of my right calf muscle where that motor laid, the hot motor laid on top of my leg. And them things weren't exactly lightweight bikes, so it took me a little bit to get it off the thing. And that was the last time I wore shorts when riding. Not a real good idea anyhow when you're out riding in the woods and you got a lot of briar patches and things like that. But the other time I rode it over to a friend's house a couple miles away. We had a huge network of trails in the area where I grew up down in Pennsylvania. And I remember I rode it over and went to ride back, I guess, after a while, just hung out at his house and stuff, and went to ride back, and I don't know what happened to the thing, but it overheated, shut down. I had oil in the gas, I had that, but thing shut down, so I'm like pushing it, and stuff, pushing this bike, and got down into where it cooled down, started up, took off again, and got down in to where the hill climb was. I might not have had enough, oil in the gas and things, but still fairly new to the whole motorcycle thing. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to make it up the hill. And I started going up the hill, and the thing died again, overheated and died again. So I had to push it way out around where the big hills were, out to this little side trail that went out, way out around. And I didn't end up getting home until after dark, and my parents were worried about me, but after I explained, then they understood. So while I had that, if you could see this one picture here, I'll show you this again, of the Trials bike. There you see the Trials bike, and behind it is an old Honda 110 three-wheeler. Here's a better picture of that one. And what happened here was there were two of these things. My older brother, knew a kid in high school, and he had one for parts, a Honda 110 for parts, a Honda 110 that was running. Or at least he said it runs, but he said it won't, the transmission's shot on it. So we went over, and I forget, bought it for $200, sold it for $300. It's a 1980 Honda 110. But anyways, we went and got this thing, and this guy is like, he's a kind of rich kid, and we weren't rich, but that's why I had a lot of old bikes. All my buddies, a lot of them had newer RMs, Suzuki RMs or Yamaha YZs or Honda CRs or Kawasaki KXs. This is 1980s, okay? So, if you're thinking, what, never heard of these bikes before, well, look at old vintage videos. That's my childhood. But so we went over, and this kid was like, I got these two Honda 110s. The one doesn't run at all. It's totally shot. You can just use it for parts, and the other one, it starts, it runs, it sounds fine, but it doesn't go forward, not backward, but it doesn't go forward. There's no reverse on these things. So, do you want them and stuff? My brother, I think he offered him like $50, and then later I paid him $200 for the thing. But anyways, brought the things back home, and my brother was, working on it as best as he could, and he looks down, and right about, so I can point to where it is, right down underneath here, you have the pull start right there, and then I think it might have been that little black switch right there, if I remember correctly. But that little switch right there, you could switch between kind of a more for power or more for speed. There was like a little switch, and this switch was stuck right in the middle on neutral. So my brother switched it to power or something like that, and the thing ran fine, ran perfect. So it's a good deal on that one. Had it for a while, and then I ended up selling it. This one here, I had this in my album. This is a Honda 200 three-wheeler, and this was my brother-in-law's, and he paid $50 for it. It was underneath some guy's porch, and my brother-in-law was always very, very good at just wheeling and dealing with people. And we're driving down the road, and he goes, "Oh man, it looked like an old three-wheeler underneath that guy's porch." And they were having like some family get-together, some Mennonites, and so my brother-in-law goes over and he knocks on the door, and he's like, "Hey, you want to sell me your three-wheeler?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I don't know, I guess." And he's like, "I'll give you $50 for it." And the guy said, "Okay." So we loaded the thing up in the truck and took off. And the old Honda air-cooled four-stroke motors, the big red motors and things like that. The 300cc and smaller, and they were just so reliable and everything. If you have any experience with those, and new gas in the tank, new spark plug, change the oil, check the air filter, replace it if it needs it, and usually that was it for the old Hondas. And so he got the thing running, ran great. Had to put some tires on it because the old tires were all dry rotted and everything, big cracks in the sidewalls, and we took that thing out and had a lot of fun with it, and beat it, pretty good. You just run it pretty hard and everything else, and those old Hondas could take it. And kind of a funny story on that one, the one area where we had these big hill climbs, I remember, I'll be talking about this in a little bit here, I had a 1987 Yamaha Banshee, first year for the Banshee, and I tried to make it up this real big hill. It was kind of a weird, it was like the trail went side hill, and then you had to turn and shoot up the hill real fast, and it was really steep. And so, I got my, on my Banshee, and I was cruising down the trail, and I tried to get up this hill, and I got about maybe 2/3 of the way up the hill, and that was it. And I just didn't, I don't know if I didn't get enough speed or what the deal was, but so I'm there, laying, as far forward as I can to keep the thing from tipping over. So I'm laying there, and I'm like, okay, starting to kind of back down, and I hear this, and I look down, and here comes my brother-in-law up on this very three-wheeler right here, and he's putting up this hill, coming up. He goes out around me, passes me, and so I'm just like, oh, brother, that's embarrassing, I couldn't make it up on my Banshee. And so I'm backing down, and I look down at the bottom of the hill, and I see all my buddies are down there, and they're down there going like this, pointing up and yelling and going like this, waving their arms to me. So I'm going, what are they doing? And I look back up the hill again, and it was a steep hill. I look up the hill, and here my brother-in-law did not make it, and he bailed on the three-wheeler. It flipped over, and the thing's just end over end coming right towards me. Just boom, 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 coming down. So I just kind of slid off to the side like this. The thing rolled up over top of me, and not real bad, didn't hit me real bad, rolled up over the top of me, and just boom, 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 down, and boom, landed on its upright, on its wheels. And the stupid thing's just sitting there idling, just perfect. Like typical Honda Big Red, you can just beat the things like crazy, and they just run and run and run. So next we have kind of a double picture here. Here we have my Honda Fat Cat. I think it was I'll look at the 1987. I'll show you the picture next on that. 1987 Honda Fat Cat. Talk about that in just a minute. But this is my first street legal car. Okay, I actually had a Volkswagen, 1970s Volkswagen Beetle or Bug or whatever you called them things. Never got it on the road. I just drove it around the woods a little bit. I paid like $75 for it. But this is my first actual car when I was a teenager. When I turned 16, that's what I had. It's a Plymouth Champ, and weird little car. It was a 4-speed, manual, a 4-speed, and it had dual range transmission, power and economy gears. So it had your normal shifter here on the floor, and it had beside it, almost like a 4-wheel drive lever, on some trucks, had power and economy. Weird, and you put it in power, and a little orange light would come on, like a little yellowish orange light would come on the dash. Put it down to economy, and so you could actually shift it 8 times if you wanted to, which I did. So, but that thing went through my years of early teen, driving and stuff like that, and field hopping. You don't know what that is. There's a road and it kind of turns, and then goes like this. You just kind of hop through the field, and that was always interesting. Dumb things I did as a teenager. Driving real fast one night, and I went into a real sharp corner, did a complete 180 in that car, just, drifted, I guess they call it nowadays, and just slid around in that thing and almost hit, broadside into a big tree with it. Another time I had it stuck in the snow, and I was trying to get my young sister to, she was 3 years younger than me, so she'd have been like 13. I was trying to get her to get in there and, step on the gas, let the clutch out slowly, step on the gas, and go as I'm back there pushing it. Well, she didn't get things right and stuff, and panicked and basically stalled the car out, and I guess she put the clutch in or something, and the thing started to roll backwards, and I was saying, hit the brakes, and she's flipping out. The thing goes back and slams into a tree, and the bumper was like this weird, like it wasn't just bolted to the frame, it had like this little shock absorber thing, and it just totally popped it out on the one side. So for like a year I drove the car. I had a piece of clothesline wrapped around the bumper and back in through the hatchback and tied to the back seat. That's how I drove the thing. So, but just stupid stuff that I used to do in these cars. And my first bike, I remember the little Suzuki 100. I got that thing up to 75 miles an hour the one time, just whee, and it just wound out, and just things shaking, I mean, you couldn't pay me to do that now. Crazy as a teenager. And that thing there, I'd get that thing going fast, and I remember we're going down the highway the one time. We were going like 80 miles an hour in a little piece of junk car, and like we hit a bump, and like we heard a clang, 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 and my buddy looks at me, he goes, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know, we're still moving, so let's just forget about it. Crazy. Taking another friend home the one time, and I went to cross the intersection, and I shift from first, and I go down into second, and I go to take my hand off the gear shift, and it starts to fall down through the floor. And I'm like, whoa. I grab the gear shift, and I'm like holding it up, and here I guess one of the U-bolts or whatever that held the shaft underneath the vehicle, the U-bolt rusted and fell out. So I had to like drive the whole way holding the gear shift up, shifting that way. So fun times. That was my first car, and first street legal car, excuse me. But here's a picture of the Honda Fat Cat 1987. There's the actual ad in the newspaper. I kept that. You can see $600 for this thing. I saw one here locally, not locally, but in the state of Maine. I just thought, I wonder if there's any of these things around. I wonder what they go for. And there's actually one for $2,500. So I know they're kind of collectible now. They're kind of a rare vehicle, but there I was taking it apart and I was cleaning everything else when I first got it. And here's a picture of me with my nephew on the Fat Cat. See it there? I would have been 15, I guess, right around there. And there's another picture of the Fat Cat. There's a 200cc, like the big red motor. It's automatic. It's automatic clutch, I guess they called them. You guys still have to shift. It's not automatic, but you still have to shift. But these are just brakes, front and rear brakes here. There's no, manual clutch. So here I am up in the my friend's cabin, going up a hill climb. There was an old quarry. There's a pretty steep little hill. Went up there and it kind of dropped off weird on the other side. And so there I am going up there. There I am coming off of a jump with it. Just caught me just as I was taking flight. There was a pile of wood shavings, like a tree crew had chipped up all these branches and stuff, and they had this huge big pile of wood shavings, and I was climbing it with the Big Red. Another picture of it. A bunch of pictures of this thing. And there again, there's me jumping. And it was a fun bike. It was, not the highest horsepower or speed or anything else, but I liked it. It was fun, and of course I could ride manual clutch, but that thing was just kind of fun because it was kind of like half dirt bike, half, Big Red three-wheeler. So kind of interesting. But I remember the one time there was a section that had like the little kind of almost like the whoops or whatever, I don't know what they call them nowadays, but that's what we called them back in my day and age. Show my age here a little bit, but I remember going through that, and it was kind of like the suspension and the front tire weren't really working together too good because I was going a little bit too fast, and so the tire was kind of doing this, because a big kind of an ATV tire on those Honda Fat Cats, and the suspension, I guess the rebound and stuff like that, it was just not working together, and so the thing was kind of acting weird, and it got a little bit to the side, and it hit, and I went down. No, I guess it was this way. I went down this way, and I remember my head slammed into the ground, and I was like, I don't know how fast I was going, but I was going pretty good speed, and it like smashed my glasses up like this, and kind of turned my helmet, full face helmet on, which you can see in the pictures there. And all I remember is my face just like scraping across the ground, and I got a bunch of dirt in my mouth and stuff. So I took a lot of hits to the head over the years, which should explain a few things to some of my enemies out there. But after the Honda Fat Cat, I didn't get a real good picture of this. You can see there's the Fat Cat right there, and beside it is a Husqvarna 250, mid 1980s one. I don't have any writing on this. I didn't have it very long. There's a side view of the Husqvarna. Had the kickstart on the left side, which is really weird. It was a fast bike, and I remember the rear wheel had the bearing was going out in it. It was like it would shake a little bit, and the bike was beat bad. Some rednecks had it, and I bought it from them. And a fast bike, like I said, but I couldn't stand the stupid thing. And I'd be riding it, and the kickstarter would fall off sometimes, so I didn't have that very long. I ended up selling it pretty quickly. Actually, to the guy, I sold the Fat Cat to a guy, the Honda Fat Cat to a guy, and then I ended up selling the Husqvarna to his son. So, but then I was kind of didn't have anything really, just other than we always had like our family Sunday afternoons and things like that. We would go to church building thing in the morning, and then Sunday afternoon after lunch we would all go out riding our ATVs and dirt bikes and everything else, and of course we would trade, and I'll ride down to the trails, and then we'll swap, and then you ride my bike back and I'll ride your four-wheeler back or whatever. And so I've ridden a lot of different things over the years, very unique vehicles, but anyways, and so I didn't have anything for a while, and I was looking for something, and I saw this ad in the newspaper, and I thought, I wonder what that is. And because again, I was looking to go up a little bit in size, because I was right around the 100cc is what I started out with, then I went up to 250, and then I was down to 200, and I was right in that range there. And so I saw a Yamaha Banshee 350. So I thought, I wonder what this is. And this is before, I'll just go Google it or something. There was no such thing back in my day. And so I saw this very ad right here, Yamaha 350 Banshee four-wheel, and I thought, oh, it's a four-wheeler. Fast, some extras, 1600 or best offer. So went there. Right there is me on it and out riding it in the snow. And went to a guy that had it. I bought it. I think I offered him $1,500, and he took it. There again, the thing could roost like crazy. Pretty much stock, except for it had Toomey T5 pipes on it, which if you know anything about Banshees, I think that they're the best out there. But I'd love to do, to really kind of burn out with it and make these giant roosts with the thing. And it did a real good job with that. It was a real powerful four-wheeler. There again, me on it out in the field. I lived back in the woods, kind of back this way. And we would I'd put on the rear grab bar there, I'd put a rope back and we'd tie a big tractor trailer inner tube, and then I'd pull people on the thing and get going real fast. And it was a pretty wild time that you'd have there. There's me again. So still have that coat too, actually. But that's my 1987 Yamaha Banshee. You can see the Toomey pipes, little skinny pipes that the Toomeys were. And there's a final picture of that thing. Again. So, but kind of a funny story on that thing. Went and I got it, and I took it out for a little test drive and stuff. Oh yeah, it runs pretty good. Brought it back, and I'm like riding it around. I'm like, it's pretty powerful, seems pretty good. And but it just sounded like something wasn't quite right, and it just was kind of not running real good, real crisp, and real, throttle response was a little bit kind of like that. And I thought, and I'm like totally brand new to what a Banshee is. I didn't understand that you have to have the carburetors synchronized. You have to have everything, your jet needles going up and down at the same time. If they're off a little bit, well, it's not going to run real good. So I remember I rode it over to a buddy's house, and we were like trying to figure it out. And I was like, maybe. And he said, well, it's got aftermarket exhaust on it. It could be that they didn't jet it, correctly. Your jets and your carburetors, if you don't know, it's a little kind of a brass little screw that has a hole in it, and then your needle goes up and down, and then that lets in more gas or whatever else. Well, if you put better exhaust on, there's more exhaust going out, so you need more gas coming in and more air as well. And so I said, I don't know, maybe, and things. But he said, let's just try it here and stuff. So he cleaned it up for me, cleaned up the carburetors, and so he puts it back together. And I don't know if he must have kind of messed with it a little bit, that it got it a little bit more synchronized. But he gets on, and he goes down the road, blah, 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 and taking off. And all of a sudden the thing backfires, and it does the infamous Banshee, like they scream, and he just takes off down the road. And he comes back, and there's, if you ever ride fast without a helmet or goggles on, it'll make your eyes water. And there's just, water going back like this, and his eyes are huge, and he's like, oh man, he's like, this thing's amazing. So we decided we ought to take it to the Yamaha dealership, which was B&B Yamaha at the time. And so we take it in there like, oh yeah, you got to have the carburetor synced on this thing. So I was like, okay. So they sync the carburetors, I get it back, and wow, what a difference. So that was a nice four-wheeler. I always loved that Banshee. Had a lot of good times on it, and actually rode it to high school the one time. It was snowy, and so myself and a buddy had a Honda 4Trax 300. Same one that I'd gone to the cabin, with, and he had to tow me back with my little Suzuki 100. But he took his 4Trax 300. I had my Banshee, and then another guy had a Yamaha Warrior 350. And the two other guys, it was their dad's four-wheelers. I was the only one that owned my own four-wheeler. So, but we rode into high school, and I had my helmet and stuff, and I just put like a coverall type of suit on. I got in there, and took it off and things. I had just my regular school clothes on. And so everything was cool. Nothing was said. End of the school day, we get on our four-wheelers and take off. And it was about 3 days later, I think, we're there sitting in class, and all of a sudden this the principal comes on the loudspeaker. Will Bryan Denlinger, Keith Ekman, and C.J. Donovan please report to the principal's office? And I remember, I think maybe one or two of us were in the same class, and like looked over at each other like, uh-oh, like, I know what this is about. So we get in there, and thankfully I was a good friend of the son of the principal. Mr. Ginger was the principal's name. And so we're in there, and he's just kind of laughing. He's like, talked to the police about this whole thing, and they said, you know, if there's snow on the roads, technically you can ride and stuff. But he was like, you're not in trouble or anything, but he's like, don't ever do that again. Don't ever ride to high school again, okay? And we're just like, yes sir, not a problem, sir. You know, because we thought we were going to be in real big trouble. So thankfully we weren't. So there's a place down in Trevorton, PA called Tower City. If you're from Pennsylvania, I'm sure you've heard of Tower City. Big, huge quarry, real big coal piles and stuff like this, and big rock piles and everything else. Huge, big trail climbs, hill climbs and things. And I took my Banshee there. And what happened is, in the back, the axle carrier on a Banshee is kind of like that. You know, like if this is the swing arm, it kind of comes down and has, you know, like this. And then it holds on, you know, the axle, the rear axle, and the disc brake and things, and then the sprocket on the other side. And so one of those bolts came out when I was riding at Tower City, and I didn't realize that. And I think it twisted or something. Somehow the rear axle kind of came out of the carrier. Somehow it might have even been two bolts, but whatever. The whole point is, the disc brake went over into the caliper and cut into the caliper. I mean, it was pretty bad, and I was done riding for the day at that point. So I had this thing to deal with. I didn't have a whole lot of money back then because I was in debt with actually a pickup truck, which I'll show in a little bit. And so I was like, oh, man, what am I going to do? And so there was a kid in high school, and he said he had a Honda 250X. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to try a four-stroke for a little while. And he said, you know, come check out my 250X. I'll trade that for your Banshee. So, because his was supposedly running good and everything else. And so I went there and to his place, and I said, yeah, I'll trade you. So here's a picture of me on that Honda 250X. And rear tires were like almost smooth on the thing. And he gave me a new set of tires that went along with it. But had this aftermarket exhaust on it. It was so loud, it was ridiculous. I didn't really even like it. And there's another picture of it. He had he cut the front fenders and things on it. It was all right, but not like the Banshee. There's another picture of it from behind the house where I grew up. And there I am jumping. Not a real good picture, but so the thing, it was not the greatest four-wheeler, and I took it into a Honda shop up in Ephrata, and I said, you know, it's not running real good, it's kind of this, it's that, whatever else, you know, check it out. And the guy checked it out for me, and he's like, oh man, he's like, this thing's junk, man. He's like, look here, the frame's cracked, this is bad, that's bad. He's like, it's going to cost you a lot of money to fix it up, to have it right. And I was like, nah. I said, I'm just going to sell it as is. Okay. So I got rid of it, and didn't have anything for a little while. And it was right around my senior year in high school that was actually my senior year when I had the Banshee, and then when I traded it. And at that time I had I had my little Plymouth Champ for a number of years, and I got rid of that, and I wanted to get a truck. And there was again, my older brother. I'm realizing how much he talked me into getting these different vehicles. But he had a friend that had a really neat looking Ford Ranger, 1987 Ford Ranger. So I'll show you pictures of that. Right there it is, kind of a dark picture. It was a Ford Ranger STX model. It had 3-inch Rancho suspension lift. It had the tonneau cover on the back as extended cab, 2.9 liter V6. There's another picture of it, me in it. And a really neat looking truck. It was dark blue with a silver stripe on the side, 31-inch by 10.5-inch tires on it. There it is in the snow. So there's another picture of it. A little bit of a lift kit on it. Had the push bar in the front. There again. There's another photo of it. And there. These are old pictures when it's a Polaroid picture. But that one there. And there it is when it was for sale. You can kind of see the blue collar there, the dark blue, like a shiny metallic dark blue. It was a really nice truck. And two stories from that thing. I was pretty much an adrenaline junkie in those years. So I remember the one time going to my friend's house, and there was these Strasburg Railroad train tracks, Cherry Hill Road, and there was it was a hill that kind of came down like this, and then it kind of leveled off, hit the train tracks, and then went down again. And so either way, you're going to be getting air if you're getting any kind of speed at all. So I'm cruising along in my truck, and I get the thing up pretty good speed, and I just launched going up the hill, just boom, hit, and I hit kind of weird, and I thought, uh-oh, get to my buddy's house, and the big, spring in the front, the big like coil spring, actually had come off and was on just like only on like just halfway. I was like, ew. So we managed to get it back to the way it should be, but I took pretty good care of the truck. It wasn't like I just totally beat the thing or anything else, but I was like, cool in high school then because I had this cool truck. And I was in debt. I began my life in debt for being in debt for vehicles, and it went a little bit after high school, I guess, and the thing started acting up kind of weird and whatever. And I realized that I took it to a garage or whatever, and they said, your main bearing's going out, and that's kind of a famous thing for these 2.9 liter V6s right around I think it was 120,000, 130,000 mile, range. And so I actually had a brand new crate motor put in it. And then one buddy was like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. We could have put a V8 in it and stuff. But I started to get into this phase of just buying and selling vehicles, just buying and selling, buying and selling. And it got worse, as time went by. Didn't quite understand why at the time. But looking back now as a saved man, I understand why. Talking about that in a little bit. But so I had that thing, and I was out of high school at that point in time. I graduated with that truck, and I remember I had a job. I was building boats, and I drive that truck to my work and everything, and I thought, I'd like to save some money here, and so I thought I want to get a street bike. Just going to get a good street bike. I had I don't have any pictures of the thing, but a buddy of mine, the same one that had the Honda 300 4 tracks, Keith Ekman was his name. His dad had an old late 70s GS 425 Suzuki, and it had been sitting like in a shed for a while, and so we got the thing started, and I was following him in, he was riding the motorcycle because we were going to put it in the back of my pickup truck, and it was like my pickup truck's like high off the ground and everything, and he's like, I really don't want to try to ride it up there, it's pretty heavy, and I don't want to try to push it up because that probably would be even worse. He's like, I'm just going to ride it. I'm like, okay, I'll follow you. So we're cruising along, and I remember we get to this traffic light, and the thing, it was not running all that great. I mean, the carburetors needed to be cleaned. It was just not running too good. So we get to this light, and the light goes green, and he goes to pull out, and the bike just dies. So he's there like trying to start the thing, and things, we just jump started it, and it wouldn't start. So he gets kick started, and he's like kick starting this thing. He's right in the middle of the intersection, right in the middle of this big traffic light. So light, goes yellow, red, and nobody can go. And so, light changes again. He's there still trying to kick the thing, gets it started, and it just keeps dying out. So people started getting mad, and they were starting to blow their horns. And so I thought, I'll just get in on the action. So I'm there blowing my horn, and he's just like looking back at me like, what are you doing? So, just having fun, So we finally gets the thing going, and we limp it to his house, and he got it fixed up and ran great then. And so he had it for a while, ended up wrecking it in a corner. I bought it off of him, and but wasn't hurt that bad or anything. But I bought it off of him and did what little work it needed, and I was riding it around, and sold it after not too long. But I thought, okay, I'm out of high school. I got this job building boats. I want to have a motorcycle that I can ride to and from work where I can, save some money on gas and whatever else, and something, a little bit more fun going to work on a motorcycle than, driving a truck. And so I went out to B&B Yamaha, and I went in and I was like, hey, I'm looking for a street bike. And they were like, oh, okay, that's cool. And they're like, we got something though you might be more interested in. And I was like, well, I don't know, but I'm just looking for a street bike. And the guy's like, just come on out, I want you to see it. So I walk out and I'm like, can I test ride it? And he's just grinning. He's like, yeah, you can test ride it. And he's like, if you do, you're going to buy it. I was like, I don't know, I just want to, ride it, see what it's like. I bought it. Here's a picture of it. There's my truck, and there's my Suzuki Quad Racer 500. They nicknamed them Quadzillas back in those days. So it was a 1990, I think. Again, the truck, my Quad Racer 500. Better picture of it right there. Put these tires on the back. You had the no fear here and the no fear there. I don't know, people from that era might remember that. The no fear thing. I didn't have too many back in those years. There's another picture of it. And again, another photo of the thing. So, that was, like I said, I rode it around the parking lot and I was like, this thing's really cool. So I forgot about the street bike, and came back with my impulsive buy of now I got a four-wheeler. So, but I always wanted one of these Quad Racer 500s, and they were kind of hard to find, and they're probably even more hard to find today in decent shape. So I got the Quad Racer 500, and really had fun on that thing. Took it to Tower City one time, and ended up riding at a buddy's house the one time. We were riding up this power line, and he's in front of me at an RM 250 Suzuki, and he roosted a little bit, kicked some rocks back at me, and it had the I'll show you here, the hand guards on it, which I was thankful for that. But right down, I'll show you on the picture, here's the hand guards, but right down in here there was a little place where the liquid cool, the pipe went in there, the radiator type of hose, I guess you could call it, went in there into the side of the motor, and a rock went right back through there and smacked that thing and just shattered it. And so I'm like, great, and so it's broken, there's antifreeze just spraying all over the place. So I'm like, well, that's not too good. They're just ruined my day. So limped it back to the truck, put it back in, and went home. And I remember we were going to go to Tower City, and I went into the Suzuki dealership down in New Holland, and went in there and said, I need this part and everything else, and I'm going to be going to Tower City in 2 weeks. Can you have it by then? Yeah, oh yeah, we'll have it then. Just come back in next Friday or something, So I come back in Friday, going to be leaving like the next day or something for Tower City. And I said, hey, I'm here for the part. Oh man, I forgot to order it. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. So didn't get to go on the trip, but then we went later. I think it was how it was. And the kickstart fell off of the thing, and so I had to put it in my pocket. And anytime I'd want to stop, I'd get the Kickstarter out, stick it on. These type of adventures. If you're into dirt bikes or ATVs or whatever else, this kind of thing. So, show you a picture here of the shed at my parents' property where I was raised, and there's my brother-in-law had gotten a good deal on a bunch of bags of old insulation, so he just stuffed them in there on top of my Quad Racer 500. And this is we would have these doors shut and locked. And he was selling a truck or something to some white trash type of guys, some rednecks, and they got to talking about four-wheelers, and he's like, oh, I got to show you my brother-in-law's four-wheeler. Big mistake. He showed him this, my Quad Racer 500, and I go to leave for work a couple days later, and I come out, go to get in my truck, and I get in the truck and I look forward, and there's the doors to the shed open, and my four-wheeler's gone. And so I'm like, oh, great. So I go back in, called my boss, said, hey, somebody stole my four-wheeler. I'm going to be in a little bit later. And, yeah, okay. So the police come out and stuff, and we filled out the report. He filled out a report and we told them, you know, here's the names of the guys that did it, and they never did catch them. They, I guess, went and questioned them, and oh no, we didn't do anything and stuff. And years and years later, they actually found the frame, just the frame for the four-wheeler. So real nice. So they obviously scrapped it. They took the motor and they sold that, and they sold whatever else off. A little bit upsetting. So that's the story of my Quad Racer 500. But I had some good times on it. But I'll show you a picture here of one of the boats. These are the kind of boats that I used to build. Big pontoon shuttle bus type of things down at the Baltimore Inner Harbor. We built everything. We had a guy that would build the pontoons back in the back part of the shop. We built everything. It was all aluminum. We'd hang the motors, you know, we'd test them, get them all running good and everything else. The bilge pump and all the different stuff, you know, everything. And here's the interior of one of these boats, designed to haul a lot of people around the Inner Harbor. We'd hook up these were all hydraulic. The steering was all hydraulic. We'd have to hook all that stuff up, bleed the hydraulic lines and everything else. And there's your throttles, the two different motors. And we did everything. Wiring, put all the windows in, start to finish. And it was a 3-man crew for most of the time that I was there. There was a kind of a wet bar in the back that we would build. There's the head, also known as the bathroom. So that's the kind of boats that I would build. And so I built those until 1998, I think it was. Graduated in 1994. Worked for the summer at Strasburg Railroad. It's in my working testimony. And then from there built boats for a little while, a little bit of time, and then I had my appendix burst because of how toxic the place was. And I was laid off for a little while, back to work there again. And talking about some of the stuff I had, vehicles I had, because I was making, you know, okay money there. And I was, you know, going out and buying vehicles. Just one after another, just going from this one to that one to this one to that one. Looking for something. Looking for happiness. Here's another one that I bought in my time working there at the boat place. I found this old thing, 1971 Ford F-150. It had a 360 big block in it. Back in those years, that was a big block, the 360 to 390. V8 3-speed. It was a 3-speed on the tree. The guy converted it to be on the floor. Talk more about that in just a minute. But there's another picture of it. It's an old truck. The infamous gas tank behind the seat. You know, it wasn't a real great truck, but I was actually the one guy that worked at the building boats with me. He had a old Ford van, and it had a 460 big block in it, and I've actually bought the motor from him, and I was gonna put that 460 into this truck, and you know, then I was gonna have, you know, hot rod it and whatever else, because the 360 that was in it, like I said, a lot of the old trucks, they had the 3-speed on the column, the steering column, called it 3 on the tree, and he had converted it to be down on the floor. Well, he didn't have the linkage right or something, and it was just like impossible to shift between the different gears. It was really miserable. And so I had that thing for a little bit of time, and just I lost my motivation to restore the thing and make it nice and whatever else. I just got rid of it. And then around that same time, I had multiple vehicles during this time. So don't think, how'd you know, are you kind of getting things mixed up here with, you know, all these different vehicles? Well, you know, it wasn't one and then another and then another. It was a lot of these were overlapping. So around that time, I kind of missed having a Honda Fat Cat. So I bought another Honda Fat Cat. Right there is me with my nephew on it. And another guy there, high school friend I knew, had a Yamaha Warrior. There's my brother-in-law with his Honda 3-wheeler, which I showed earlier, the 200. There's a friend of his that had a Kawasaki Mojave, and this is a Kawasaki Takati 3, I think is what they call them things. If I remember correctly, I think it was, the plastics were painted, because I think the Takatis were actually green, but it was painted. It was a 2-stroke 3-wheeler, 250cc. But we just, we were out riding that one day and took a picture there like that. But that was my second Honda Fat Cat. So another picture of it there. There's me and my nephew on that thing. Here's inside the shed. You can see here from the work testimony, if you hear that one, where I started going from the boat place to working woodworking with a wood lathe specifically. But there is my Honda Fat Cat, and right here, this was a Honda 200M three-wheeler that I had bought around that same time, and I was just doing some work on it and things. So, but the second Honda Fat Cat, it was a guy not too far from where I lived, down there in Peach Lane in Lancaster County, and he was a couple miles away. An older guy had that Fat Cat, and my dad met him because my dad worked at a hardware store at the time, and he was like, "Yeah, I got this old Fat Cat, I'm thinking of getting rid of it." And my dad said, "Oh yeah, maybe my son's interested." So I said, "Yeah, I'll take another one." So I had that one, and just had it for a little while, and ended up selling it. But around that time period, my brother-in-law actually had a Kawasaki GPZ 750. I'll show pictures of that. Okay, there we go. Right there's the GPZ 750, not looking too good because of what happened. And there's another picture of it from behind. I actually bought it off of him after he wrecked it. And what happened? Well, he was coming home from work the one day, and an Amish buggy basically turned in front of him, and he hit the horse broadside and ended up killing the horse and nearly got killed himself. So, but I rode the bike numerous times. It was a really nice bike, ran real smooth. And so he was like, "Yeah, it's totaled," and the insurance company's just like, "Scrap it." And I said, "Well, I'll buy it off of you, And so I didn't pay a whole lot for it, and I was going to fix it, and had too many other projects, so I just got rid of it. But it's a shame because it was a real nice bike, real nice smooth bike to ride. Here's a better picture of my, Honda 200M, and kind of a little funny joke there, pro taper bars. I don't think so. But that was a good little three-wheeler. I took my nephew for a lot of rides. He really liked doing that back in those years, so you see a lot of him in the pictures. There it is again. Another picture of it there. I like to go down through creeks and things with it. It was a lot of fun. It was a good little three-wheeler, very reliable. And then this was one that my brother-in-law had. I think it was a 250 SX or something like that. All the motorcycle parts all over the place. Quite the rednecks. But there's mine Honda, and then his Honda 250 beside it. There we are down in the woods across the road from where I grew up. There was a creek that you could ride through. Here's a picture of me going down through the creek. We'd love to see how deep of water we could go through with the thing. And just real good, reliable. Going up a little bit of a hill there. Should have been leaning forward a little bit more, but just kind of messing around. Creek banks and stuff, There's my Honda, and my brother-in-law's, I don't have it on the back there. I think that thing was a Mako, I think. I don't know if I have any pictures of it, but again, I had that thing for a little while and then ended up selling it. There's a picture of me on my Honda 200M. That's my youngest sister's boyfriend at the time. There's my brother-in-law on his old bike. Don't remember what it was. I think it was a Kawasaki, an older Kawasaki. That was his truck back there, 1970s Ford, or Chevy. Yeah, Ford. Chevy. Might have been a 72, I think. There's my dad actually had this old step van back there, so had quite the weird vehicles. But this guy here was really, really, really good with mechanical type of things. And he actually had, sitting on his bedroom dresser, he had this bike right here, a Jackson EX. Okay, and this was 1995, so that was a year after I graduated high school. But had this little motorcycle right here, and the thing ran. It was a little two-stroke, and ran and everything. Just one gear or anything, little pocket bike. And there's my older brother, the one that taught me how to ride. That's Dean, riding the Jackson EX, riding up the road, laughing like an idiot. We were all laughing and everything with this bike. And little story on that thing. I get on it. It's my turn to ride. And I'm like riding it. I'm about almost a foot taller than my older brother, and well, I shouldn't say a foot taller. Probably about 6 inches or so taller, 6-7 inches taller than my brother. So my older brother, and so it's like my turn to ride. So I'm on this thing, and my knees are like way up, and I'm cruising down the road on this little thing. And about then I hear this noise come behind me, and I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be embarrassing. Guy on this Harley comes up behind me, Harley Davidson motorcycle. He rides up beside me, and I like look up at him, I'm looking up at him and stuff, and he's just like dying laughing. So I'm sure it was funny looking for him, this tall, lanky, young guy on this little tiny motorcycle cruising down the road, So it was fun. It was a little, it was a blast riding that little thing. But yeah, here's a picture of the bike that my brother-in-law had. There's my Honda 200M, and there's this old thing. It is a 1976 Mako 250. The rear shocks are upside down, inverted shocks in the back. The exhaust pipe runs through the air box, and Kickstarter's on the left side. Carburetor doesn't have a choke. It had a prime bulb, so kind of a unique bike. And you can see again there that the the sprocket's on the right side instead of the left side. So definitely an odd motorcycle. Had a weird gas tank on it and everything. So it's kind of funny. But at that point in time too, it was like all these machines coming into my life. I was just going crazy with buying stuff. It was just like a motorcycle dealership there almost. And my brother-in-law, Whitney is his name, married to my older sister, and he, the one with the Honda 3-wheeler and stuff, and then that was in the Kawasaki thing there, little Kawasaki motorcycle. At that point in time, he was working at a big woodworking place in New Holland, and one of the guys he worked with, one of his co-workers, said that he had this old street bike, and my brother-in-law said, hey, maybe I'd be interested in it, or my younger brother-in-law, he might be interested in it. And so we went to look at it, and here's a picture of it. I was fixing it up because it had been sitting for a very, very long time. It's an old Suzuki GT 750. Okay, I don't know if you might not be familiar with that, but I'll tell you a little bit about it here in just a couple minutes. But the interesting thing about this is it is a 3-cylinder. Okay, you can see that I put some rags in the boots going there into the head of the motor, just to keep any kind of dirt out or anything else. I think it'd been sitting for like 15 years or something crazy. I mean, the gas in the tank was just terrible. It was just like brown gel, brown molasses almost, and it smelled like varnish. It was awful. Just everything needed to be going over in the bike. And so 3-cylinder 2-stroke, 750cc is what the thing is. They were water cooled, so they called them water buffaloes. And that's what that bike was. Here's another picture of it. There I have the gas tank off of it right there. And I had to totally redo the gas tank on the inside. I put this rust, like a chemical in there to get rid of the rust. And then you have to do all this different stages. And then you put a coating inside with another chemical to kind of restore the gas tank. So the gas tank was good. But we ended up getting the thing running. And it was definitely a unique bike. Very unique. Another picture of it there. So another picture of it after we had it all back together and running. 2 pipes on the right side and 1 on the left side. So like I said, a very interesting bike, very heavy. There's your oil reservoir thing there that would mix with the gas and things. And heavy bike, but it sounded really weird. It sounded almost like an outboard motor, like a bigger outboard motor on a boat, because it's 2-stroke, but it's like a big 2-stroke. Definitely a unique bike, and it's fairly, I wouldn't call it real fast, but it was interesting. And another project that I had here. Here you go. You can see our motorcycle dealership, essentially, and Honda three-wheelers there. There's the GT750, the Water Buffalo. And back here I had a very interesting project. It was a late 1970s Kawasaki KZ1000, and there's a Yamaha Banshee frame. So you weren't planning to do that, were you? Yes, I was, actually. My KZ1000, my brother-in-law's Mako 250, and then he had, I think it was either an old Honda, or I don't remember what this was, but it was like a 1960s bike. You might know that if you're really a fan of those older bikes like that. Again, another picture of the GT750. I had the emblems off at the tank at the time. I later put those on, but there's that. There's the KZ and the Banshee frame. Here's another image of that. This was a barn find. The guy didn't have the title or anything else. It was an old bike. He'd wrecked it. You can see the signals off there. And it ran good. We rode it around and everything on the back roads. It was really strong running. This, the gauge up here was all duct taped together and everything. You can kind of see that. But the thing ran excellent. But he didn't have a title or anything else for it. So he said, we just bought it basically for the motor. And my plan was, I found a 1989, I think this was. It had the red plastics with the gray trim, the gray tank shroud, and the gray seat, and then the red plastics front and rear. I think it was a 1989. And I was going to put this motor, the KZ1000 motor, into that Banshee frame. It was a complete Banshee. I bought off a guy, and everything was there. He just took it apart, and he was too lazy to put it back together again. So I was going to put the KZ1000 motor into that frame. There's a side picture of it. I was kind of envisioning, what my plan was I was going to cut the frame in here and up, in here, and I was actually going to mount, cut this here and here and here and here, and I was going to mount this frame with the motor in it like that. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to have to redo the swing arm and all kinds of interesting stuff. But I was actually had this motor at where I was building boats for a while, and I had this frame as well, and we were going to work at putting that in there. And never got around to it. Ended up leaving that job before I could get that done. Again, motorcycle frame. Another picture of it. There I'm stripping the bike down. And there we're down to frame and frame. KZ1000 and Banshee frame. There's a car I had too there. I'll get back to that in a couple minutes. And there we go. Again, another picture. And so that was my plan on that whole thing. And like I said, I never got around to doing it. And just, I had so many different projects back then. It was crazy. All these different motorcycles and ATVs and everything else.